everyone. Welcome back to Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast. Here for part 2 of My Life, My Tapes. I'm Charles Skaggs. There's Xan's elbow as I'm looking at it on the camera.
I'm Xan Sprouse. Nice to meet you.
Why, thank you, elbow. Oh, excuse me, Xan Sprouse's elbow.
Yes, you have to be specific. Because God knows who else's elbow that could possibly be.
Sometimes Xan's camera does some really interesting things, like it'll go up to the roof or off to the side, and
Xan doesn't like to sit still.
I thought I had short attention span, so yeah.
Not that I don't have a short attention span, it's that I have a short...
You're hyperactive.
...posterior tolerance for sitting for a long period of time.
Got it.
Sometimes I want to get up and get something to show you. Sometimes I need something from the drawer behind my computer.
That's all right.
You never know.
That's all right. It's always a mystery. So
I can't sit still. I'm a fidgeter. Can't help it.
That's okay. That's good. That's all right.
Right now, look at this. We're moving because
we're moving. Yep. So
I get lip balm.
Yeah, lip balm.
Which is in a little drawer with Columbia.
I would never have expected that. In 100 years, I would have never guessed you associated with lip balm and little riffraff and Columbia action figures from Rocky Horror. All right, so
also a pocket knife in there and a Jimmy Jr. from Bob's Burgers. So,
okay. Well, I've got a Dale Cooper here from my Funko figure.
What a timely Funko figure!
Yeah, I would say, isn't this a timely reference? Because obviously we're going to talk about we're going to continue our discussion of the autobiography of FBI Special Agent Dale Cooper, My Life, My Tapes. And again, for those of us who missed us in episode 28, although kind of surprised you would listen to part 2 and not listen to part 1, but I'm cool with that. Whatever floats your boat.
Don't make people follow your timeline, Charles. If you want to listen to this podcast wibbly wobbly, that's fine with me.
Yeah. Well, humans, you're so linear. This is again
with your one heart.
Yeah, with your one heart and your like linear timeline and your
planet that still exists.
Exactly, and your lack of regenerations and all that. Yeah. Dying and not coming back as another actor. Come on.
Yeah, what is that, humans?
What's up with that? What's up with that?
What's regeneration?
Yeah, and all of a sudden Kenan Thompson comes out of nowhere.
Talking about Gallifrey.
With his Jerry Curl hairdo.
I love that maroon suit. I think that's fantastic.
Saturday Night Live reference, in case you're wondering. Yeah. Then once again, still written by Scott Frost, brother of Mark Frost, published by Pocket Books on May 1st, 1991. And we're going to pick up where we left off in part 1, oddly enough, with part 4, which I like to call the FBI Academy years.
That's what they are.
That's what they are, conveniently enough. So this is essentially Dale getting into the FBI and going through what is essentially basic training for FBI agents at Quantico, Virginia.
Yes. It starts out with him making quick little entries in his audio journal about how he took a written test and then did an interview. And apparently he finished the written part of the test in record time.
Of course.
And his interview was both factual and philosophical, and the other agents in the interview were really impressed that he had an autographed photo of J. Edgar Hoover.
Apparently that's how. Yeah, I just love that he brought that up as a okay, hey, by the way, I have an autographed photo of J. Edgar.
I'm curious, did he bring it up or did he actually bring it? Did he have like a briefcase or portfolio?
It would not surprise me, knowing Cooper, if he had a briefcase with the autographed photo and showed it off to the agents.
And then he was like, "Oh, and by the way,
yes,
check this out."
Yeah,
and they was like, "Wow."
That's great. That's so funny. Oh, and here's the letter too. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
That's funny. So so by this time he's 23 years old, in case you're wondering, if you're doing the math here. Because we found out in the previous part that he was born in 1954, which again was 5 years before Kyle MacLachlan, I believe. And at this point, he finally gets his acceptance in the FBI, told to report to Quantico on September 1st, 1977. So while all of us, as at least all of my generation, watching Star Wars at the movie theaters, Dale Cooper was in the FBI Academy.
Square.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, do the Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction.
Which is a rectangle.
This is true.
But,
You're right. You're absolutely
or
right.
you could do the L7,
Or
which
yeah,
is kind of also a rectangle, but
right.
you get what we mean.
Yeah. So yeah.
Don't be a
rhombus, okay?
Yeah.
For the a little shout out to you geometry kids. So he gets sworn in. Oh, and before he goes, he spends a few days with his dad. He gets a letter from his brother Emmett. Now remember, Emmett is the draft dodger hiding out
in Canada still.
In Canada at the moment. And he calls Cooper. He sends him a letter. Calls him a tool of the establishment who will rot in hell.
It was good to hear from him, though.
Exactly. Thanks, bro.
He was still happy to hear from him. Which, when I read this, I started thinking, and you know how you go through your entire day thinking, oh, I need to look that up. And of course you never do, because when you get to your computer, you think, what was I going to look up?
Yeah.
But I wonder, what, if any, is the statute of limitations on draft dodging?
That's a good question.
You know, when can you come back into the country after you've essentially broken federal law about draft dodging?
I don't know what the statute is on that. Funny enough, unlike our president, I never dodged the draft, so I wouldn't know.
Right. That's we are too young for it. We had our moments of being afraid of it with our
right.
First Gulf War and our everlasting war on terrorism.
Yeah, my mom was a wee bit nervous during that first Gulf War.
We were just too young, and then we were just too old.
Exactly. So on September 1st, he gets sworn in at the FBI Academy in Virginia, and while there, he meets a woman named Robin, who's apparently in his defensive tactics and physical training class.
Mm-hmm.
And there, I guess a couple of days later, he undergoes a simulation, which ended up killing his partner, Robin, during the simulation.
He feels really bad about this.
And why does he feel bad about it? Because, surprise, he's attracted to her.
Oh, no. What do you think? Which is the only thing I can say. The only thing I can say about this is I feel really bad because I know this is not going to end well.
No. And now, to Cooper's credit, though, he's like, okay, I can't go forward with this because it's just, he says personal weakness is going to lower my guard. But of course, in typical Dale Cooper luck, Robin tells him that the attraction is mutual.
That is atypical of Cooper's luck.
Pretty much. But they both decide, okay, this isn't the right time or place for it. So they both kind of back burner to this for the moment, for the foreseeable future here. And later on, about a few months later, which I'm kind of surprised that it only takes 3 months for him to graduate and become a special agent.
Right. He accelerates through this program and graduates with honors and does very, very well.
Yeah, but apparently, though, he's not the valedictorian. He lost that to Robin. So I guess he's the salutatorian.
Well, she was a worthy adversary. She was also very good.
Exactly. And that's probably partly why he's attracted to her, because maybe she's a better agent than he is.
That's possible.
It certainly is. At this time, he gets a new pocket-sized cassette recorder from his dad.
Which is the one I'm sure we all know, and the model we all know and love. I'm sure he's gone through a couple in his time, but
click. Yeah.
Yes, Diane, I'm holding in my hand a small box of chocolate bunnies.
Exactly.
But it's not about the bunnies.
It's not about the bunnies. It's not about the bunnies. Is it about the bunnies? It's not.
No, it's not about the bunnies.
But is it about the bunnies?
Because chocolate.
You could go back and forth on that all day. So he gets his first assignment in the Pittsburgh field office.
Philadelphia.
I thought it said Pittsburgh there.
Oh, it is Pittsburgh. I'm sorry. I was
Yeah.
thinking about
Yeah, yeah.
Philadelphia, 1989.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's assigned to the Violent Crimes Task Force.
Gets an assistant.
Gets an assistant. Well, yeah, we'll find that out. So, yeah, he now before I guess he goes to his assignment though, Robin and Dale kiss on the gun range because hey, who doesn't get turned on at the gun range?
That is adorable
Yeah,
for two overachieving FBI agents to have their
yeah.
first kiss on the gun range.
It's love. True love.
Love with an Earth W.
Gun range. Gun range is what brings us together today.
Don't even start going there. Do you remember what I said last week about Monty Python fans?
Yes, I know.
That goes double for Princess Bride.
Yeah. I know.
As you wish.
As you wish. All right. So, about a week before Christmas, he arrives in Pittsburgh, gets an apartment over a bakery, and that's essentially takes us to part 5, which will be essentially the FBI years Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And so here he, about a day later, he spends his first day behind a desk, not really impressed by that.
I do love the other agent that is quoted at the beginning of this part saying that he remembers meeting Cooper because he had the cleanest gun he'd ever seen. Which, Cooper is just ducks in a row kind of guy. So I loved that.
Hey now. All right.
Hey now.
Hey now. He gets assigned to secretary. Well, as we know, being Twin Peaks freaks, or Twin Peaks geeks, that his secretary is none other than Diane Evans.
Diane Evans.
Although at this point, Cooper doesn't know her last name.
He doesn't, and he even mentions that later on in the narrative.
Probably because the writers had never given her one at this point.
They'd never given her one, exactly. So, and for the rest of the case that he's on, and for pretty much for the rest of this chapter, the case he's on, all of his recordings are addressed to Diane. Yes. It's more that he's dictating to her rather than keeping a journal. But this is what I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Is that the book tells you that there are a lot of things that are redacted due to security reasons, but we are able to hear this one case about the baby who was kidnapped.
Right.
That Cooper is able to solve, but it was pretty terrifying, and Cooper is pretty shaken up by it. So Cooper might seem like he has, an ironclad constitution and nerves of steel, but things do get to him.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So now he does say, though, that about Diane, or dictating his tapes to Diane, he says that, okay, I know I'm talking to myself, but I like the idea that maybe you're in the room with me.
Right. So I think that Cooper and Diane have always had a nice connection with each other.
I kind of theorized that, okay, at first he was just dictating his tapes to himself, but saying Diane's name to kind of make himself pretend that she's there. But then at some point, she starts listening to the tapes.
Right.
Because obviously it's, case and information or whatnot. And so maybe he just kind of starts dictating to her intentionally.
Well, and and as we know from the show, he is asking her for things and telling her, here's what we need to do, and send me earplugs like you did on my trip to New York, things like that. So he does wind up realizing that she is part of this with him and will need to be privy to what he's saying. But what I love is that the first time he ever really requests something from Diane in his recordings was to talk to them about where did they get this horrible bean they call coffee. First of all, he's like, talk to procurement about what hellhole of a government surplus warehouse they unearthed this blend from and what war it was captured in.
Well, this is very important to Cooper's world.
And of course, at the time, this is 1970, what is it, 78 at this point?
Yes.
So the United States hadn't seen a war in a good 25 years. So this is disgusting coffee, apparently. And then the next request he makes of her is Diane, what do you know about a special agent named Albert Rosenfeld, and why is he so angry?
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much.
Which unfortunately is pretty much all we get of Albert
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this book.
Now you notice though here there's a little bit of a typo because they spell Albert's last name Rosenfeld.
Right, it's not Rosenfeld
Yeah, so I hadn't
or
quite figured.
Rosen or Rosenflower.
Or Rosen. Yeah, as Andy liked to call him, if I
Andy called
recall.
him Agent
Yeah.
Rosenflower. Yes.
No, Agent Rosenflower. Yeah. Okay.
And it's another fine moment in law
Of
enforcement
course.
history.
Yes. Yes. That's great.
Where did he keep his water dish?
I love talking to you.
Oh, I just love Albert so much.
He was so quotable. All right, so yeah, I guess this was all during a case. This when he met Albert during a case where there's several fresh graves lined up in a row in an abandoned tenement, and one of the graves has a woman's hand extending out, presumably upward, kind of like a tree. Like maybe she's lying there, like it's reaching,
or like an arm.
like an arm. Ooh, yes, I know.
Ooh,
yes.
I mean, there's no way in hell they could have predicted that.
No.
I like to pretend I know something about them.
Yeah, that'd be a great connection, though. Yes, yeah, she is the arm. Yeah, or the evolution of the arm.
The evolution of the arm.
Yeah,
the abomination.
Yeah, right. That's great. 3 bodies, all female, between the ages of 16 and 30. And interestingly, Dale starts feeling the same evil force at work as the same one that he encountered while he was in college at Haverford. And there's a note here that there's a file in the case that's active, but all tapes pertaining to it are withheld.
Right, this is what I was talking about. There are a lot of parts of the book that say that there are tapes about this, but they've been redacted from this transcript because they are
FBI. They were never released by the FBI. Yes.
Right, they're matters of security, or they're open cases or things like that. So
now, presumably, knowing what we know now, maybe because if this evil force was the same one, maybe this was redacted or withheld by Gordon Cole's instruction.
Well, I think there's part of it too is I think these murders, from what they sound like,
right,
I think they're Windom Earle.
Oh, okay. Well, remember though that whole case with Windom got folded into, with Laura and everything. So that I would kind of wonder if Gordon kind of like oversaw that as well, presumably.
I think he did, and at this point,
because when knowing what Windom was like trying to glean all the secrets from the Black Lodge.
He was, and I think that when this book was written in '91.
Yeah.
If we're thinking about this in the Twin Peaks timeline, Windom Earle is still missing.
Right.
So we don't know where he is, what happened to him just yet. So we have these murders that are kind of weird and kind of like the ones that Cooper was suspecting him of. And I think Cole has just kept them, at least at this point, Cole just has them still as open cases, with not just involving an open case murder, but involving a missing agent who has gone, he's gone a little funny in the head.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's yet to come in our discussion. So Windom Earle shows up a couple months later to head the Pittsburgh office. And this is where he kind of recalls meeting Dale at that college job fair that we talked about last time. I think it's funny.
Yeah, because Cooper says, I have the feeling we've met before.
Right.
And which cracks me up, because the way Cooper says it in the book is, I believe we have met before. And it's a very sterile, you can hear Cooper saying it in his very sterile voice. And that reminds me of Robert Blake saying, we've met before, haven't we?
Oh, from Lost Highway. Yeah.
Lost Highway. And so I think it's just such a great Lynchian style that there's this kind of intertwining thing.
Yeah.
But what surprises me, it doesn't surprise me that Windom Earle remembers Dale. I'm surprised that Dale doesn't remember Windom Earle right away. Because
I am too, because normally he's that observant.
He's really observant.
Yeah.
Observant.
Easy for you to say.
Albert Rosenflower. He is very observant.
It's another fine day here in podcast history.
Podcast history. Charles, you don't know how right you are.
Exactly.
But not only was he very observant, he was in high school and he met a real live FBI agent who was possibly going to give him a job. So you would think he would remember Windom Earle really well, the same way I would have assumed that he would remember really well the FBI agents that he met as a child when he got to tour the FBI at the invitation of J. Edgar Hoover.
Right.
So I'm just surprised that was.
I am too. It doesn't really seem like Cooper.
It doesn't seem like Cooper. Yeah, it doesn't seem like.
Yeah. So, but there's a note here that Windom tells Dale that he's been following Dale's progress.
Of course he has, because
he's all creepy like that. He's creepy.
He's a creepy man.
He's creepy. So.
And I love this one where he says that the owner of the bakery downstairs is leaving bear claws at his door every morning.
Yeah, you're right.
And then he says, must remember to buy his wife a nice big sausage, which sounds so dirty.
It does. Cooper, probably that overtone. I'm sure the writers were just like, yeah, this will be funny. But I'm sure in Dale and Cooper's, just naivete a little bit, he probably doesn't get the double entendre from that.
He doesn't get the double entendre, and you know that the next day there's going to be a knock on their door, and it's going to be Dale Cooper very matter-of-factly passing over like 2 pounds of spicy Italian sausage, saying, "Here you are, Mrs. Baldini," and then giving a thumbs up and
walking
thank
away.
You for the bear claw, and just walking back home.
Yeah. And then like the woman just like looks at her husband probably and is like,
you know that kid?
Shrugs or whatever. Or just takes the sausage and goes off into a private room, or who knows. Okay, so we get a hostage situation at the Eastern Savings and Loan. And Windom Earle and Cooper get inside the bank without resistance. Dale ends up shooting one suspect. The other just surrenders.
Right. But he had to use deadly force.
Yeah, so this is essentially the first time Cooper's killed a guy.
Yeah, and he's not happy about it. No, he knows he had to do what he had to do.
Right.
But he doesn't like it.
Yeah, and apparently per Bureau guidelines, he's given several days off to deal with what happened. Windom Earle invites Dale over to his house for dinner and chess.
Of course he does.
Of course he does. Yeah. Yeah, why don't you come meet my wife, Caroline?
Come meet my wife, Caroline, and come play chess with me. Exactly. And this is not going to end well. But yes, he gets flowers from Diane.
Already the warning signs is because we know what's going on here.
Right. He gets donuts from Mr. Baldini. He's on leave for a while. He goes through psychiatric evaluation. Then he comes back on desk duty for a while so he can get back into the swing of it slowly.
Yeah. So while he's off, Diane sends him flowers. Nice. Okay. Windom, in their first chess match, beats Dale in 7 moves.
Of course he does.
Of course he does.
Which is interesting because we then later find Dale and Cooper in a chess match where he's trying to win in as many moves as possible.
Right.
Because every time
Windom takes a piece, he kills a person. Yes.
Right. So he wants to keep that going as long as he possibly
can. And Cooper realizes that he's not going to beat, or at least stalemate, Windom Earle. So which is why he brings in Pete Martell, the local chess expert.
Right, and he's trying to get to a stalemate, but what does he figure out? That he can't do it without having at least 2 moves?
Yes.
Or something like that. So he's like, I don't know what to do. There's got to.
I mean,
something bad's going to happen.
He can minimize the loss, but not totally. Apparently, some people will die, but it gives them some time to try to track Windom Earle down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Cooper meets Caroline, of course. Now, Caroline pulls him aside a little bit and says she hopes that Dale's shooting, won't affect his life the way that it affected Windom's. So
and Cooper says, I what she meant. Oh, we're going to find out.
So yes, so apparently, um, presumably, yeah, the big the beginning of the descent for Windom Earle was when he shot and killed someone.
That sounds like what Caroline's trying to tell Dale, that
Right, right.
this was the
Or
beginning
at
of the
least
end.
or at least that's what she thinks. Maybe it was something before that.
Well, and if he's interested in the Black Lodge and interested in all that kind of
Yep.
supernatural evil and darkness, I'm wondering, was he touched by Bob at some point too? I know we've
That's
always wondered that about Windom
that's what I'm
Earle.
thinking. That's kind of what the book infers, I think.
Well, and Windom Earle sort of does that thing where he knows a little bit about something
Right.
that he thinks he's into and then wants to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And then the entity that he's worshiping basically lays the smackdown and says, "Oh,
Yeah. I think Bob was probably
there's
just
only
like,
room in this lodge for one of us,"
yeah, I'm thinking Bob probably gave Windom Earle a taste, but once Wyndham's ambitions got the better of him, he's just
Mhm.
like, "Oh, wait a minute here, Sparky."
Right, right.
And like, "I will take your soul."
He can't have your soul. I will take his.
Yeah, that.
And that's the thing. It's almost as though Wyndham is aspiring to be Bob,
Yeah.
but he's too eager.
But Bob is just so way out of his league.
Well, and Bob is so patient and ancient and
Yeah, exactly.
just pure absolute evil, whereas Windom Earle still has this faint glimmer of humanity
Yeah.
left over, where part of his motivation is revenge.
Right.
And you can't want revenge on someone unless you love something at one point.
Yeah.
And so he still has that humanity in him, whereas Bob has no humanity. He's just doing evil things for the sake of evil.
Well, yeah, he wants to kind of torture people and feed off their fear.
Right.
That's his agenda.
That's his agenda. It has nothing to do with
Because he's
any
essentially like
other
he's a fear vampire.
He's a fear vampire, and he has no humanity whatsoever.
Right. Um, Cooper has another weird, wacky dream, this time of a man with no legs sitting across from him in a green chair. He says
What
nothing.
is it, and how do I stop it?
Yeah, pretty much. He says nothing, then begins to laugh, tells him he can't run, that it, whatever, and this is it in capital letters, it is right behind him and sure to kill. And no, it's not probably Pennywise.
No, it's not Pennywise.
It's not
Or a
Pennywise.
giant spider.
Or a giant spider, yes, exactly. So Cooper wakes up to the sounds of screaming. Maybe it's his screaming. He starts questioning, what is it and how do I stop it?
And who is this legless man?
Good question. We don't get an answer. Not
Because we know an armless man. Well, we know a man with one arm,
right.
but we don't know a legless man.
No.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's weird.
It was kind of a very random thing that was thrown out at this. Yeah, so Cooper gets back on desk duty. Apparently after his psychiatrist sticks his head in the oven and turns it on. And Windom is apparently the one who got Dale back. Well, gee, I wonder if Windom Earle put the old hypnosis whammy on the psychiatrist.
See, that's the only possible
or
thing.
Windom killed the guy or drugged him or whatever, stuck his head in the oven, made it look like a suicide.
Or is what Dale is discussing with the psychiatrist that horrific that certain mental constitutions can't take it in any shape or form?
Maybe.
I don't know, because we have things that are coming up here.
Mm-hmm.
All of these people getting killed and their hands chopped off.
Yeah, there's some really dark stuff coming up. So
that's Windom.
Stay tuned, kids.
And so this whole Windom thing is just going to get weirder and weirder really fast.
Yeah, it is. So Windom Earle and Cooper become partners, which I think, of course, was Wyndham's plan all along.
Probably.
Part of his game.
Apparently he has been watching him since he was in high school, so he's probably been.
So he's just basically he's manipulating events to get him close, and presumably trying to get him, which we know that he later tries to get Cooper closer with Caroline.
Right. His
as part
all
as
his
part of his kind of dementia or
all of his
derangement.
master evil plan. He's
Yes,
like a one man demented evil.
my evil
Frickin'
plan.
frickin' laser beams.
Yeah.
He he's like that.
Can
What is that website?
can I get some dancing dwarfs with frickin' laser beams on their heads, or white horses with frickin' laser beams on their heads?
Uh,
Throw
we
me a
can't do that.
frickin' bone here.
Well, what do we have? We have a one armed man and an evil tree. What?
And it's electric. It's electric.
Frickin' throw me a frickin' bone here. Been asleep for 25 years. Need the info. But what is that
There's
website?
a great mashup potential there, I think.
There is some pretty good mashup potential there. What is that website that you can pay like $10,000 and they orchestrate coincidences for you and the woman you're stalking? What is that? I forget what that is, but that's what Windom Earle is like. That he's
Probably.
probably been orchestrating this from the beginning
Oh,
since
I'm
he.
sure. I'm sure.
And I just wonder, would it have been any other kid from any other high school, or is there just something that special about Cooper?
Well,
I think there is.
Well, maybe it was when he met him at the job fair, and then he's just like, maybe this kid's got something. So he kind of, at that point, maybe started paying attention to him at that point.
Yeah, Cooper is
Like
very, very special.
maybe saw some talent in him or got a vibe off him or something.
Well, there's probably a vibe because Cooper does have that second sense.
Exactly.
That third eye.
That gift, whatever you want to call it. Yes.
Exactly.
Well, he's that sensitivity to the supernatural.
Right.
And he's almost kind of precognition, as we talked about it, inherited it from his mom, who was also kind of the same way.
Yes.
So there's another case, the body of a male approximately 30 with wrists tied behind his back.
And hands cut off.
And sometimes my arms bend back.
I feel like I know her.
Yeah, exactly. Shot once in the back of the head, so kind of execution style. Hands cut off, teeth smashed, face destroyed.
Isn't that how Leo Johnson died too? Wasn't he shot in the back of the head?
Maybe.
Oh, I'll have to go back. Jeez.
Yeah, yep.
Jeez, I only read these books a couple months ago.
I know. We need to pull out.
And I was so excited about Leo being dead. I should remember the details of
But
that.
it's worth going back to reading Albert's autopsy of Leo Johnson.
That is so worth it.
In the final dossier. It's always worth going back to that one. So Dale speculates maybe it was organized crime. So he gets a call from Windom Earle to meet him in an area frequented by crime figures. And here's where things go sideways a little bit, or quite a lot, actually. Dale detects a tone to Wyndham's voice he's never detected before.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes there, finds Wyndham's car. Windom Earle is nowhere to be seen.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh. Goes into an abandoned building, finds Wyndham's wallet and ID. He comes across it later. Comes across a door with a large X drawn on it in chalk. Apparently, Fox Mulder stopped by.
Yeah, I thought about that too. It's in chalk. It's not in tape on a window, but still.
Well, actually, kind of Fox Mulder shows up a little later in this book, but we'll talk about that.
He's dressed a little different.
He's dressed a little differently, yes.
Yeah.
The room is empty except for two severed heads. As it happens. They appear to have been refrigerated because, hey, who wants a rotting head, right? No sign of Windom, though. Cooper calls Caroline. Apparently, Windom received a call the previous night around 7 p.m. Then he left their house, telling Caroline not to wait up for him. He didn't say who called. And then another body is found, the same as the first one. And lab reports on the first body say the wounds and severing were inflicted while the victim was still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which definitely sounds like a Windom Earle kind of a thing. He's definitely into torture, as we've seen.
Pretty much.
I mean, I'm glad Leo Johnson's dead, but I do think him being tortured was a little unfair.
Yeah. So the fingerprints on the severed hands belong to Louis Dante, a minor crime figure. And by this point, Windom Earle's missing for 24 hours. Cooper gets a call that tells him to go to an abandoned barge in the Ohio River. Hey, shout out to the Ohio River. And to come alone. There he finds two severed hands, but one hand holds a small black square of cardboard, while the other holds a white square.
Hmm.
Black and white. Now, where have we seen that before?
Black and white, and I wonder whose hands
Let's
these
see.
are.
Let's see. There, you mean black and white, like on a chessboard, or maybe black and white, like in a lodge somewhere,
Definitely with
and like
Windom Earle,
with a
definitely a
chevron
chessboard.
floor.
I think this is definitely a chessboard. Which one is which one
Right.
do you pick?
Well,
What's your
these are
move?
squares, so yeah, it's probably the
Yeah,
chessboard.
I
But
think this is a what's your move, Cooper.
pretty much, pretty much. But Dale's not quite connecting the dots yet.
Well, I think Dale is.
Maybe his subconscious is.
Well, I think maybe his subconscious is, but I definitely think he doesn't want to believe the worst of Windom Earle
Mm-hmm.
because I remember he did like Windom Earle when he first met him, and I think he wants to believe that his partner is good, especially. And I think there's a part of him that wants to believe that for Caroline's sake.
Right. So on August 3rd, 1978, big moment in Dale Cooper's life. Gordon Cole. Gordon Cole. The Deputy Director of Criminal Investigation Division arrives to oversee the investigation. Dale has his first meeting with Gordon and goes over the case with him. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
now you know trivia buffs what day they met.
When they met.
And he gets a thumbs up from Gordon. Thumbs up. Then Gordon just takes off for Washington. Caroline, meanwhile, receives a communication from Windom. He only says, "I'm sinking, I'm sinking."
And they can't quite figure out what that means.
And the call gets cut off, of course, at that point.
Yes. Yep.
As Windom Earle keeps manipulating everybody. Dale puts a tap on the phone without Caroline knowing because, hey, that's legal.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The call apparently came within the area code. That's all you can get before the call was cut off. Second victim is identified as Jimmy Lester, a minor thief with a long list of arrests. The connection between the two victims is unknown. Now, my theory on that, why he chose those guys, maybe it was like two guys that Windom Earle happened, like they were previous cases of his, maybe. And so maybe he thought, well, hey, what better way to kind of get revenge on guys that weren't,
that was
like maybe it was just like, well, these were unsolved cases because they lack of evidence or something.
Right, or that is a typical problem with organized crime is that everybody does one not really illegal thing to come together to make a big illegal thing, so it's hard to pin any one thing on one person.
Right, it's all kind of compartmentalized. Thank you. Yes, that word. See, I'm having fun too today.
What is in the water today?
I don't know. Well, see, I'm having tea, so I can't really say, but yeah. It does have water in it.
Water.
It has water in it.
Batman's a scientist.
Yeah. Windom, all of a sudden, though, the next day shows up at the Pittsburgh office, and collapses. He's taken to Central Medical.
The offices of the FBI in Pennsylvania in general.
Right. People just walk in.
and
freaky
disappear.
Stuff. Yeah.
They
don't show up on the cameras or
cameras don't work. They just fall in and out of existence. They pass out. They
teleport from the elevators. Stuff like as it happens. Things.
This is one nutty FBI. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's Pennsylvania, so as a Browns fan, I'm always skeptical of Pennsylvania. But
as well, you should be.
Thank you. So I guess a day after that, Dale ends up recording a conversation he has with Windom Earle, which is all kinds of trippy, as you might expect. Cooper asks him about the last 4 days. Do you remember where you were? Wyndham's he's laughing. He says, cracks in the door. And I kind of wondered, well, is that a reference to those dreams that Cooper and his mom were having about, don't let the man in the door. Don't
let him in your room.
Right?
Yeah. So maybe the dreams are affecting Windom as well.
Maybe. Cooper asks, what did you see? His first response is Dale Cooper. And then Cooper asks again, what did you see? And Windom Earle replies, "The abyss, Coop. The abyss."
We all know what happens when you look into an
Yeah,
abyss.
yeah,
It looks back into you.
yes, yeah. Or, it's just you put on another James Cameron movie, one or the other.
Well, either way.
Yeah, yeah. If you caught that reference. Cooper asks, "What did you find there?" Windom says, "Wonderful things."
Wonderful things.
Yeah. Place both wonderful and strange.
And strange.
Yeah. Windom suddenly loses consciousness. Yeah, right. Remembers nothing. Cooper wonders if his dream is connected. Maybe.
His dreams usually seem to be connected to things.
Yeah, but maybe he hasn't quite worked out how that works yet. Like,
Yes, maybe he
hasn't realized how kind of insightful his dreams can be.
Right, exactly. He hasn't figured out that his dreams
Yeah.
make sense later on
Right.
or come true
Or at least
later
will
on.
lead him down a certain path or what have you.
Right, maybe he hasn't noticed that quite yet.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Windom says he looks forward to a nice quiet game of chess.
That is so ominous coming from Windom Earle. From what we know of Windom Earle, when he says something like that, that is just so ominous.
That's kind of his Dr. Lecter moment.
That means somebody's going to die.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's not good news. Now, we get a notation here that follow-up investigations over the next 4 months are all dead ends with no arrests.
Because it's Windom Earle.
Exactly. Thank you.
That's the thing.
Thank you.
He's cutting people's hands off.
Pretty much.
Being all freaky, and we just can't.
Yeah. It's like,
if you want to go back to Hannibal Lecter,
your suspect is right there. Yes.
When do we begin to covet? We covet what we see every day.
Right. Well,
so we don't even notice what's right in front of us.
Yeah. Well, if you're familiar with the Hannibal Lecter saga, you know that apparently he also led the FBI in a merry chase before he got caught, or actually surrendered himself. So
before he hit Will Graham in the side with an arrow.
Yeah. So, okay, this takes us to 1979, where Dale is apparently told to go on a vacation. He goes vacations at the La Casa El Corazon, which is Spanish for the House of the Heart.
10 days of forced exile.
Yeah, now here's the really creepy part. It's a small island in Mexico where Windom and Caroline spent their honeymoon.
Windom Earle's been going crazy for a long time, I think.
Pretty much. And things get a little even more...
Or we know that there's Bob, but there could be other entities similar to Bob that have gotten to Windom the same way Bob got to Leland. So, yeah, but he's had some problems for a long time, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
And what kind of masochistic craziness is it to go to the same place the woman you are surreptitiously in love with had her honeymoon? That's just masochistic.
Yeah, of all the places that Windom Earle could have recommended or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's just a little too intimate of a recommendation, in my opinion.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, the whole thing is creepy anyway. Cooper meets an old man who taught Windom Earle chess while he's there. Well, of course he does.
Mm-hmm.
He says to Cooper, "La muerte," which is the death.
Death, yes.
And then he leaves, but Cooper's not, quite ready to let him just walk off yet. He follows him. The man says, "There is death in your face. I can teach you nothing."
Cooper says, "What the hell are you talking about?" And he says, "That is the wrong question."
Right. And then he takes off.
Yes.
So
then Cooper wakes up the next day to find a dead chicken stapled to his door, basically.
Yeah.
So we've got some sort of voodoo Santeria kind of thing going on here.
Right. Essentially, yeah. Essentially, it turns into Live and Let Die. With Baron Sunday.
Where's Yaphet Kooter when you need him?
Yeah, or the 7-Up guy.
Oh, Jeffrey Holder. Never had it, never will.
Yep.
Jeffrey Holder, by the way.
Yeah.
First ever autograph I got at a convention.
Really?
Yes.
Was he nice?
He was so nice. He signed my Annie soundtrack.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I always have had a soft spot in my heart for Jeffrey Holder.
I'm very envious you have his autograph. Especially now that he's dead.
Yeah, he gets fast.
Unfortunately. Cooper goes to look for the old man because, hey, well, yeah, he might be your initial suspect of who nailed that chicken to your door.
Mm-hmm.
Finds him in a small dirt floor shack, hanging dead from a rope tied to a rafter. A note left for Cooper, presumably, says, "Forgive. I was just a stupid old man. May God stop him."
I'm assuming him in this situation is Windom Earle.
Right. And you think, well, if he's the guy that taught Windom Earle chess, maybe he's referring to Windom Earle at this point.
And what else did he teach him?
Exactly. Yeah, we don't know
Yeah.
exactly, but I'm sure it wasn't anything good. So next day, Cooper realizes that he just spent the last 20 hours under the influence of a powerful narcotic. I'm not sure how this was delivered to him, but somebody did. And he feels something terrible has happened in Pittsburgh.
Yes, and to paraphrase, or not paraphrase, but
Yeah.
to quote Coach McGurk from Home Movies, what is going on in Mexico?
Nice reference.
Thank you.
I liked Home Movies a lot.
I loved Home Movies. Yeah.
That's funny. Oh,
he's gonna come after your mom.
Oh, Brandon.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So he has a bad feeling that something is going on.
I have a bad feeling about this.
And apparently he is at the Gilligan's Island resort because there's no phones.
Right. Right.
So he can't do anything. And what's funny about this is that he has this really bad feeling, but he says that what would make him feel better would be to be able to contact Windom Earle. So either he knows that what's wrong is because of Windom, and he just wants to be able to talk to him and make sure that everything's okay, because if he can talk to Windom and figure out that Windom is, I'm just sitting here at home with Caroline, we just had dinner, he can feel better about it. Or he's thinking Windom could help. And I'm leaning towards that he's figuring out that it's the former, that he needs to make sure he knows where Windom is, because Windom is probably the source of whatever problem's going on here.
Yep. So at this point, things get even more sideways. Cooper heads home, learns that Caroline has been kidnapped.
Here we have our bad thing that's happening in Pittsburgh, and here we have that this is probably Windom Earle's doing.
Yep. So here we go. This apparently happened the same time that Dale was drugged with a narcotic, while Windom Earle and Caroline sat down for a meal. Supposedly, 3 men burst into the house well armed. Windom was knocked unconscious. Yeah, right.
I believe that as far as I can throw it.
Pretty much. While waiting for hopefully some news about Caroline, Dale ends up losing at chess again.
This does not bode well for the future.
No. Apparently the chess metaphors keep flying left and right here. A vagrant gets picked up wearing Caroline's sweater. That's a nice sweater. Says God gave him the sweater. And he had an angel with a red face with him. Now, red, of course, like her face was all covered in blood, presumably.
Yes.
So,
it was an angel without a sweater and screamed like a woman when God hurt her.
Yes. That's a creepy line.
You know what that makes me think of?
Yeah.
Makes me think of Laura.
Right.
Laura with the angels screaming, and Laura with
the angels will never hear her and all this.
And the angels won't save you. And Laura with no shirt on yelling at Donna not to wear her clothes.
Right.
So I just, for some reason, that just the no sweater and the screaming made me think of Laura.
Yep. The vagrant was told by God to deliver a message. God is everywhere. Translation, Windom Earle is everywhere.
Translation, yes, exactly. And there's a code working here, but it eludes me. God is everywhere. I think that is the key. Yeah, Cooper.
You think?
That is.
You think? Message delivered via secure telephone line is received at FBI headquarters in Washington. And the message goes, she loves him not. She is not dead, but her love is. Caroline, Carol, C, gone. And Dale...
My fears. that it may originate within the Bureau are growing.
Yeah.
Have not spoken of this with Windom, but I must. No, you shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, he's desperate to find out what happened to Caroline, so he probably feels he has to. Again, this is Cooper. He's being the FBI agent. He's got to pursue every lead.
Right.
So 3 days later, Windom Earle agrees to be placed under hypnosis. And we get a fun little session where Cooper is asking him, like, where are you now? Windom says, there is much light and is very dark. What do you see? Truth. Ha, ha, ha. Why were you taken there? I was not taken. I was chosen. And for what were you chosen? Cooper asks.
To be a good scout.
To be a good scout. Now, I thought that was kind of interesting considering Cooper used to be a Boy Scout.
Well, and he laughs after he says that. So
right.
I think Windom is saying that to Cooper to relate to Cooper and almost poke fun at Cooper's ambitions.
Yeah, I think so. Or just kind of needling him a little bit.
Needling him a little bit. And then he tells him that you can't see it, can you? No, Caroline saw it. What was it she saw? Love and evil.
Right. And he says, can you take me to where they took you?
No.
And he says, no, you can't get there from here. Which
I think, I wonder if that means...
Which I guess apparently Windom Earle was listening to R.E.M.
I was thinking that exact same thing. Yes. Because every time I read...
We're totally in each other's brains at this point, yes.
Every time I read that phrase, then that song's in my head. Can't get there.
Can't get there from here.
Can't get there. Yeah. So thanks for that, Scott Frost.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So can you not get there from here, like literally from Pittsburgh or from the room they're in, or do you have to be in Washington State, or do you have to be in a different state of mind?
Well, of course, we know, having watched everything else, that he's probably referring to the Black Lodge.
That's my assumption as well.
Yeah.
Because I think Windom knows something about the Black Lodge, but not enough.
Yeah. Well, he does say he says he wasn't taken, he was chosen.
He was chosen.
So I kind of wonder if he was brought to the Black Lodge.
Above a convenience store?
Above a convenience store, something like that. And so for the next 2 months, Caroline's whereabouts are unknown. And then in April of 79, they receive a report of a woman matching Caroline's description being arrested during a sweep of prostitutes in Lower Manhattan.
Right. So the thought is that she's been kidnapped, sold into human trafficking, or brainwashed in some way.
Right.
So after a couple of misses, they finally find her. And we have a very similar situation here where she's been apparently doing sex work and is suffering from heroin addiction.
Yeah.
So
for some reason,
that this is related to the Renaults and Blackie. But it is very similar to what happened to Audrey Horne.
Yeah. Now, there's nothing to really pin Windom down on this, so he ends up going with Dale to go ID her. So Windom isn't actively investigating this, in quotes, investigating this with Cooper. And yeah, even though obviously he's the one responsible for it, so works out great for him.
Right. So he's doing a really good. He's doing a really good job of, like you said, being the Hannibal Lecter of, being the criminal, but still staying on the inside. So Caroline,
I don't know what's happening. That's weird. Huh?
Interesting. Who's hungry?
Yeah. So Caroline gets found. She's in the interrogation room. She doesn't recognize Windom.
No.
And apparently she's now addicted to drugs.
And they do blood tests, and it is heroin. Right. And she's taken to Bellevue Hospital.
Right.
Which we all know is a mental hospital in New York. Yep. And she's slowly but surely coming back, but Cooper thinks that she is trying not to fully come back. I think she's trying to stay a little guarded.
Yeah.
She eventually recognizes Cooper, and once she seems a little bit more stable, they're going to move her to a safe house out of the mental hospital.
Right.
But she's not terribly happy to be seeing Windom Earle. She's confused by him.
Right.
And the way Cooper describes it is she knows who he is, yet at the same time something seems to be holding her back. So it's like she's recognizing him as being the person everyone thinks is Windom Earle,
Right.
but she's also aware that there's something else going on with him, and
Something that she's blocking, as it
and
turns
he's
out.
responsible. She knows that he's responsible for what's happened to her.
Yeah. And there was an attempt on Caroline's life, which
Mm-hmm.
apparently there was the same mystery drug that was found in trace elements during her blood test with
Right,
the heroin.
and who's questioning the staff of the hospital? Windom. So we're not going to
Yeah.
find anything
Nope.
because we know who did this. It's Windom.
Right. But Cooper thankfully noticed the change in color on the IV, and so they caught it in time at this point. Um, Caroline wakes screaming and uh, says she saw the face of the man who abducted her. He was still coming after her, but she knows she's going to die.
And then he does do a hypnosis
Right.
session with her as well,
Right.
and the lights go out, so she doesn't necessarily see who does this.
Mm-hmm.
But she says it's dark. Hands touch me again and again. Stop! It hurts in the arm. It's sharp, and
It's a very
she's
very
basically
Laura Palmer moment here.
very Laura Palmer moment, and she's being injected with a drug, and
Right.
she says it burns. I want to let my brain out of my head, hit it hard. And he says, do you remember any faces? And she says, yes, Helper. He's dead.
Right.
So,
And they cut off his head and put it in her lap, which
mm-hmm,
might mess you up just a little bit.
might mess you up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
after hearing all this, and this is where Cooper, you just want to kind of face palm at this point. He finds himself growing attracted to Caroline.
of course, well, he's been attracted to her for the first
Yeah,
time he met. He's always described her as a remarkable woman.
right.
So I think now, because
This is
Cooper,
this is a total head desk moment here.
did we ever determine what the clinical
Well, they call it the white.
diagnosis?
Well, they
White
term
knight,
white
yes.
knight syndrome. Yeah,
Cooper definitely has white
that's
knight syndrome.
that's
We've
what
always known
Tammy
this.
that's what Tammy speculated, and I think that's pretty dead on after
That's
reading this.
pretty that's pretty dead on. And we saw that in the show.
Hmm.
We saw that with Marie. We
Right,
saw that
with
with
Laura.
every
Yeah,
with Laura. We saw that with even talking about Cooper.
Annie.
Yeah, from his young life, with Marie and other girls
Right.
that he has, or even with oh, what's her name? Was it Lena, the
Lena. Yeah,
pyromaniac?
yeah.
Yeah. So he obviously has white knight syndrome, and it looks like she is developing a little bit of a Florence Nightingale syndrome here too.
Right.
And so this is very, very obvious that he's going to.
Like
He always
she's gone through all these traumatic events. Now Cooper, you would think, should be a professional enough to maybe this is not the best time to try to pursue a relationship with this woman.
But this is like to the nth degree. I mean, Cooper
Yeah.
can't resist
Right.
the woman who needs saving.
Right.
So not only has he's been attracted to her and at least intrigued by her since he met her.
Right.
And now that she has this sort of added bonus of needing saved, I just don't
Yeah.
think he can resist. I don't think he can help himself.
Well, and let's not forget that. Remember, Windom Earle was trying to push these two crazy kids together.
Windom Earle is orchestrating this, so he's
because he apparently had some paranoid delusion that that Cooper was attracted to his wife and vice versa or whatever, and then he wanted to prove that was right, that theory was right
exactly
by actively pushing them together. So essentially creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, like we talked about.
exactly. So he can justifiably enter into his Monte Cristo.
See, I was right. I was right about that. Yeah.
I was right, and I'm going to plot the most outrageously intricate revenge on you, Cooper.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you would just think in the years that the Count of Monte Cristo was doing his thing that he wouldn't stop and be like, dude, there is so much other stuff I could be doing with my time right now.
Yeah.
Just, after a while, you'd be like, God, this is boring.
I could take up racquetball, oh, okay. And some other stuff. So Windom Earle at this point, they're in a safe house. They basically move Caroline to a safe house. Windom decides, okay, I'm going to leave the safe house because, oh, I'm afraid my presence is impeding Caroline's progress. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, we're not buying that for a second, but Dale
Yeah.
does. Windom Earle tells Dale he believes evil exists as an independent life force and will eventually conquer good because of guile.
At the end of all battles, only the victor is honored, and no one remembers whether he was good or evil,
Right.
which I think is a fascinating statement because that's true.
Right.
That we tend to remember, or we tend to want to believe that good will always triumph over evil because evil is dumb.
Right.
But
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Darth Helmet.
Dark Helmet, yeah. So I'm
Dark
paraphrasing
Helmet.
Dark
Yes.
Helmet there,
Yeah.
but we like to think that, and there are certain instances when yes, that is true. The Axis powers versus the Allied powers. We had fascism versus freedom.
Right.
But we also had Hiroshima. Like the
Yep.
victors weren't
No.
always great people. So I'm just using that as
Yeah.
as a as a very obvious example.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very interesting
Everything isn't
statement.
so cut and dried. It's
No,
black. It's not.
nothing's.
Nothing's totally black and white.
All you do is you remember who won.
There's just
Right.
shades of gray.
Right. Exactly. Or to put it in a completely trivial comedic
Yeah.
terms, John McEnroe's won Wimbledon a couple of times. He's not the greatest guy in the world, although I do
No.
love John McEnroe.
No.
He has his moments of being kind of a dick.
Yeah. Kind.
So,
You think?
but we remember his victories.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's very easy to gloss over that. Yeah. We tend to try to overlook the bad stuff in
Mm-hmm.
favor of the good stuff sometimes.
Right. Exactly.
So let's see here. At this point, Windom gets attacked.
Quote unquote attack.
Yeah, as he goes inside his house, a superficial stab wound to the hand and
See,
arm. So like,
see, the fact that Cooper mentions that this is superficial
right.
says to me that deep down Cooper knows that this is Windom Earle.
Yeah, maybe he's in denial about it at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe his subconscious has figured it out, but consciously he's not.
He just can't do it.
Can't admit it to himself, I think.
Because what's going to happen if it's Windom Earle?
Right.
Then Cooper's going to pick up Caroline and sweep her away and save her. And as much as he might want that, that's not the moral thing to do, in his opinion.
Right.
So.
Well, the question he really should be asking himself, but throughout all this, is the typical investigator's question: who benefits?
That's the thing.
And at this point, Windom Earle benefits the most from all this, as we find out.
Yes.
So Cooper learns that his feelings for Caroline are mutual. Of course they are.
Of course they are.
And so she says she loves him. They kiss, of course.
Oh, they don't just kiss.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah, there's that too. Yeah. And somewhere Windom Earle's probably watching on like some stocky camera thing he's hooked up and going, see, I told you so. Caroline wakes from a dream with a scream. She apparently saw the face of the man who took her again. And I
saw the face of the man who killed me.
Yes, nice. She agrees to try another hypnotic session in the morning, but there
is no morning for Caroline.
There is no morning because the next morning, Dale's stabbed once in the chest. Caroline's dead after also being stabbed.
Wonder who stabbed them. It was my husband.
Yep. Who's connected to Caroline and Cooper?
Who knows where they are?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and of course we know from the quotes I just did from the last episode that it was in fact Windom Earle that did it.
Exactly.
So
that was a very good Caroline impression, by the way.
Thank you very much.
You got the tone perfect.
It's the best I can do without saying it backwards and then having it play.
Yeah. Um, the FBI gets a frantic call from Windom at this point. A blood
Mm-hmm.
trail indicates Caroline was killed in the bathroom, then dragged into position in Dale's arms. So the body was moved into Cooper's arms.
Ew, Windom Earle.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do like, dolls here, essentially. Um, Windom supposedly was found in the kitchen clutching a phone. No arrests were made. Again.
And he seems quite insane.
Right. Dale wakes up in the hospital a couple weeks later, remembers little of the attack. Dale's dad and Gordon Cole arrive at the hospital, and Cooper believes he knows for the first time what love is because he lost it.
So sad.
Which I have to say, that's such a tragic thing to say.
Cooper's life is so tragic when it comes to love.
Yeah.
He can't win.
No.
I hope,
Yeah.
I so hope
Yeah.
that there's a little tiny part of Cooper that gets to know the love of
Right.
Janie E. and Sonny Jim.
Yep.
When he comes back home. He deserves that.
Home. It's almost kind of like Laura Palmer in a way here, because that they feel that there's this they can't find happiness.
That's very true. Well, Dale, the difference is though Dale just keeps.
Well, he keeps plodding along. He obviously doesn't like turn to drugs or anything like Laura did. Laura had all this because of the abuse cycle that she was in.
She considers herself unworthy of love.
Right.
Whereas Dale seems to be more incapable of love.
Well, I think he wants to be, or at least acts like he wants to be, but he feels like it's never going to happen. There's always going to be something. And given his past, it's understandable why he feels this way.
I can see that too. And not to sound too Star Trek about this, but Dale Cooper is a very methodical, scientific, logical mind.
Right.
Love is not that.
Yes.
Love does not make any sense whatsoever.
No, not if you're doing it right.
Not if you're doing it right. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why he has such a problem with it. That's why he's not able to.
That's a good point. That maybe his brain isn't wired for love.
His brain isn't wired for that kind of whimsy.
Yeah. Well, that kind of unpredictability.
Yes, definitely unpredictability.
Yeah.
So poor Cooper.
Yeah.
And of course, poor Caroline. I mean, this is terrible.
Yeah, because she's dead. So yeah, poor her.
Well, and she's also having those terrible feelings of.
Well, in her last minute or moments on like last few days are just in this terror.
Right.
Because all the dreams and nightmares of being abducted and and all this.
She's surely dealing with the torment and conflict of feeling, oh, I'm finally feeling happy, I'm in love,
right,
but I'm betraying my husband. And even if you're thinking about it in a completely mundane sort of a way, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to get divorced now, who's going to get the house, blah blah blah. But she's probably got that going on in her mind, but she's also got, I just betrayed my husband, who I know attacked me and who I know is insane. This is bad.
Yeah, well, notice Cooper doesn't bring that up either.
No,
he doesn't go like, oh my god, I've fallen for my partner's wife,
my insane partner's wife.
Well,
yeah. And he does say that I betrayed my best friend and have lost him to madness. And I think Cooper is sort of blaming himself a little bit for being the catalyst that made him crazy. But I think it was more that Windom orchestrated his own straw that broke his back.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think that Cooper definitely should absolve himself of this. I mean, yeah, it's not cool to have sex with your buddy's wife.
No, that's a huge bro code violation there.
But when your buddy is a murderous, insane man who's trying to kill both you and her,
yeah, maybe that's a pass on that one.
I think it's time to start examining when loyalty gets to be shown the door.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the moment you try to kill me or that your wife. Maybe that's not the. Maybe that's kind of where the bro code ends. I would think.
Right. So So Cooper's in the hospital recovering from the stab wound.
Yeah.
Windom is in the hospital recovering from being crazy after seeing what he saw.
Right.
Finally looks at Cooper, speaks to him, and says, "Chess, anyone?" Which
Yeah.
means
Mm-hmm.
Wyndham's ready to finish what he started.
Game on. Well, yeah, because while he's being willed out, he essentially was laughing through all this, and he stops laughing as he's being willed out and says to Dale, "Your move." So,
Creep.
so picture like this whole like a whole Joker scene where like the Joker is laughing away at Batman, then stops laughing and says, "Your move."
Yeah, this is more of a Scarecrow kind of
Yeah, but I agree, but
game.
yeah.
Yeah, with the weird
But
dreams
you see
and
where I'm going with this. That kind of
yeah.
psychotic madman.
This is the bastard psychotic love child of the Scarecrow and the Riddler.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. You're right. I think the Riddler's a good comparison too. You're right. So Dale gets discharged from the hospital, goes to visit Caroline's grave, and there's like a small stone of red granite that says "In Memory." Who put it there?
Well, some people have their stones purchased before they're gone.
Yeah, we don't know.
You never know.
So a month later, he asked Gordon for a leave of absence. So it must be real if he wants to leave the FBI.
Yeah.
He blames himself for his failure. And he basically spends the next 6 months beating himself up over it. His whereabouts are unknown.
Nobody knows. I don't know who I am. We search and always end up looking into the same mirror at the same reflection, hoping that we will find something different, which I think is an interesting take on the concept of to repeat the same action and expect a different reaction.
The definition of madness is that you do the same thing expecting a different result.
Right. And if you repeat the same action and expect a different reaction is surely the sign of madness.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's very true that, we can't keep looking in the same mirror and seeing the same face and expecting something to be different.
Right.
It's always going to be us. And you have to, as hard as it is, you have to own everything that you are. And the crazy parts, the good parts, the selfish parts, the nasty parts, the loving parts.
Right.
You have to own it all. Otherwise, you're going to keep trying to push it to the back, but it's still going to be there. It's still going to be, twist me and turn me and show me the elf. I looked in the river and saw, I don't know what rhymes with elf. So.
Didn't know we were going to get this deep, did you, kids?
Oh, yeah. This is welcome to.
Yep.
This is what happens here on Twin Peaks Out of Print Book Club.
Yep.
It gets very metaphysical.
Yep. That's right. So we're deep diving big time here. All right. So this takes us to part 6, the FBI year San Francisco, what I called. This is our last segment. And we have Dale. By this time, it's February 1980.
Right. And he's finally, it's hard for him. He says he doesn't want to believe it. He's not ready, but he knows it's true.
Yeah.
That's the same thing we've been saying for the last 20 minutes, that this Windom Earle did this.
Yeah.
He was crazy for a long time before he even met Dale.
Yeah.
He doesn't know where and when he crossed the line. He knows that he orchestrated his own kidnapping. He kidnapped Caroline. He killed Caroline. And he's going to do all that he can to make sure that Windom never sets foot outside of the hospital.
But right now, he can't prove it.
He knows it, but he can't prove it. He doesn't want to believe it. He can't prove it, but he knows it in his heart. So he knows that he needs to. Yeah. He has become the Dr. Loomis to Windom Earle's Michael Myers in this situation. That he's just gonna. I spent 7 years trying to reach him, and then another 6 trying to keep him locked up because I knew that what was living behind Windom's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Yeah, goes all Donald Pleasance. Yep.
Goes all Donald Pleasance on us.
Yep. So Dale's ready to return to active status by this point. And about 10 days later, he records Windom in the psych ward.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Do you know who I am?" Windom replies, "Yes, you are selling something." "Where's Windom?" Cooper asks. "He left." So apparently Dale's talking to someone else, presumably.
Yeah, so who are we talking to, I wonder? And what I think is funny is he's in a straitjacket.
Right.
And he says, "My gloves don't have fingers," which is interesting in the sense that he has a straitjacket, which we all know your arms go in
and don't
come out the other end. But thinking about also all those guys with their hands cut off.
Yeah.
So
Well,
what is his deal with hands and fingers?
well, what I'm wondering is like, okay, we've kind of talked about like maybe that Bob has kind of inserted himself into Windom like, on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
But what if Windom kind of went a little schizo, multiple, dissociative identity disorder on us?
To try and hide from Bob?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe his personality fragmented or something.
A sort of a
which
Sybil kind of a
maybe
thing to try and hide from the mother.
Had a psychotic break because of the experience, maybe. And
definitely a psychotic break, that's for sure.
Yeah, so just something I was wondering. Cooper asks, where did Windom go? And Windom replies, around, here and there, over hill, over dale. See with it, and of course, emphasizing the word dale. And he says, "Dale, I will hit the dusty trail."
Which he does.
Yeah, because that's basically his code for like, I'm going to get out of here.
I'm going to bust out of here.
Yep. Cooper asks, why did you kill Caroline? Was it because she loved me?
I don't think I want to buy what you're selling.
Yep.
And he says, do you know who I am? Yes, you're selling something. And it's,
yep. That's
he's trying to sell the idea that he knows what Windom Earle is all about. And Windom Earle doesn't want to give in as any more than Cooper wants to believe it.
So Cooper asks, did you stab me? When Windom Earle replies, define stab. Yeah. It depends on what your definition of stab is.
Exactly. Another 90s definition question that we all remember so well.
Exactly.
So he goes basically through the thesaurus of what it means to stab.
Right.
And he says, why? To heal all the sick little children of the world.
Yep. And Cooper asks, where were you taken when you were missing? And here's where we kind of get a little insight. Windom says, a rest stop with the biggest goddamn bathroom you've ever seen.
Could that be a convenience store?
That's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm. Like a highway convenience store?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
This is interesting to me, too.
Well, because we know that it moves, for one thing.
We do know that it moves, and it can be one story, two story. We have no idea.
Yeah, maybe they didn't know this back in 91, but we know now.
Know it now.
Yeah.
What does evil look like, Windom? You always ask the wrong questions. I don't think you've learned anything. Yep. So again, he's being told he asks the wrong questions.
And so here's the question then. Was the entity that Cooper's talking to here the same one that was inside the old man? Because he says you always ask the wrong questions, and the only other time that phrase was brought up earlier in the book was the old man.
I think exactly that, because after their exchange, he says, what did the old man teach you? He says, he taught me everything.
Right.
And I think Windom Earle wanted Cooper to go to that same island resort so he could try and learn the same things, or at least meet the same evil entity he did, because there's probably, just like Leland Palmer, there's probably still a little bit of Windom Earle in there that's tortured. And we all know Windom Earle's penchant for revenge.
Right.
And what better way to get revenge on someone but to subject them to the same torture you've been subjected to?
Yeah. And who says Bob couldn't have just been it wasn't just Laura and Leland that he was messing with. He could have been messing with a bunch of people for all we know.
Well, and that's and we obviously know there's weird stuff going on all over the world, because here's Windom Earle and Dale Cooper in Mexico, and then look what happened to Philip Jeffries in South America.
Right.
So this is not just isolated into Washington State.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, Bob is the personification of evil that we understand.
Right. Right. And I think, and especially since when we read in the Secret History of Twin Peaks, about how there is this ancient evil in the world, and when you have, and you do have ancient cultures from Mexico, from South America, that could have been aware of the same evil as well. This would be the kind of thing that there might be a Twin Peaks story that we hear about at some point from the ancient Celtic, Celtic spirits, things like that. I mean, when you have it seems to go anywhere where there's an ancient culture with the native tribes here in North America,
For
both in
for all
the
we know,
Pacific Northwest and in Mexico, and then the native civilizations in South America. So this is an ancient evil
and
that we're talking
you
about.
could apply it to anything. Like for all we know, Bob could have been Jack the Ripper.
Well, that certainly
You
makes
know,
more sense than the H.H. Holmes theory.
right? Yeah.
Have you heard that theory that
No,
H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper?
no, I haven't heard that one.
Well, it's an idiotic theory because first of all, it doesn't take into account how long it takes to get from Chicago to London.
Right.
And there is no way in hell H.H. Holmes would have wasted bodies like that.
Hmm.
If anything, H.H. Holmes would have been the next Burke and Hare
Yeah.
selling bodies. So I know way too much about H.H. Holmes. It's not good. It's not good.
Not good.
All right, so back to Twin Peaks.
Back to Twin Peaks. So Dale, and I think rather wisely at this point, plays the tape for Gordon.
And Gordon also agrees that he should never, ever leave the hospital, ever.
Right.
Ever, ever.
Meaning Windom, yes.
Yes, meaning Windom.
Yeah, and so Dale accepts reassignment to San Francisco at this point.
This is...
Yeah.
Diane, pack your bags. We're going to San Francisco.
Exactly.
And the car is gassed up, the trailer filled. I have a cooler full of sandwiches, pickles, marshmallows, trail mix, and milk. I love that.
Yeah. And
we should have had
like Diane saying "F you, Dale" or "F you, Cooper."
Yeah, exactly. Where's the vodka?
Yeah.
I need vodka if we're going on this long of a trip. But yeah, he's taking his dad with him.
Yeah.
And they do a little tour of the United States as they go.
They go to and eventually land in Reno, where his dad marries a woman named Shamrock.
Shamrock. She's good luck. You gotta
exactly.
You gotta figure.
She's lucky. He's gonna get lucky with Shamrock apparently. So they get hitched. I think maybe his dad just kind of like leaves him at that point. You know, maybe stays in Reno, or I don't know.
I love the description of this. My new stepmother is named Shamrock. Interestingly enough, she is an old Bryn Mawr grad with a degree in Germanic languages.
Right.
They plan to spend their honeymoon in a little hut with a sauna on top of the Continental Divide. Diane, do you ever wonder if you were left on your parents' doorstep by gypsies? He's like, how do I come from these people?
Right. Yeah, pretty much. Well, it's kind of ironic, yes, that Cooper, Mr. Straight-laced FBI agent guy, had hippie parents, apparently. Or at least a hippie father, essentially, and brother.
Well, right, that's the thing. Well, I mean, he's sort of the...
Yeah, the odd... He's the
he's the black suit tie sheet.
He's the odd duckling.
He definitely is, but he's sort of the Alex P. Keaton of his family.
Right.
That everybody else is very... But he does share that metaphysical, psychic... special gift thing with his mother, so he has that. But his dad.
Although instead of Ronald Reagan on his wall, Cooper has J. Edgar Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover and Ephraim Zimbalist Jr.
Yeah.
So, and with the dad, and I'm sure there's lots of dads out there who have lost wives and then wound up inappropriately married to, potters that cheat on them, or...
Well, you have your midlife crisis and I'm going to get to 20-something and I'm 40 and
Yeah, exactly. So he gets to San Francisco after having some adventures throughout the United States, like going to Alcatraz, Great Plains, finding Chinese donuts.
Yep.
And guess who's in San Francisco with him?
So once again, the coincidences of Dale Cooper's life come right into the forefront. Robin Masters. Yeah, remember Robin, from the FBI Academy, that he was kind of like having a little crush thing, but they never developed anything from it. Well, she's there in the San Fran office. And so he gets a new case about a month later. The body of a young man, approximately 20, dumped next to the highway, bound and gagged, shot several times, naked with signs of sexual abuse.
Poor guy.
Now,
it feels to me that we have the makings of a serial killer here.
Yeah, because there are apparently other unsolved murders. So, and this is where it gets a little...
And these are male prostitutes.
Right. So, apparently this one was 19 years old, addicted to speed.
Mm-hmm.
And Cooper theorizes that the killer has killed 8 times over the past 2 years in a straight line from Illinois to San Francisco. 6 of the victims were last seen in gay bars. So Dale, and this is kind of hilarious. He goes undercover as a gay man, and he talks about
Yes.
how comfortable like leather. He never knew how comfortable leather chaps could be, or whatever.
The feel of leather against skin is a
Yes,
surprisingly sensual experience, is what he says.
yeah. So he goes to
So
he goes
I love
to
the name of the club. It's
Club
called Club
Y.
Y.
Yes, as in Y chromosome.
Yes, exactly.
Um, So there's a light blue sedan circling the club. Dale pursues a Dodge Dart that attempted to run over a male prostitute after an argument over services rendered.
My question about this Dodge Dart is: was there a chickadee on it?
There was what?
A chickadee
A
on it?
chickadee.
Nope, that's a chickadee on a Dodge Dart. So what another thing that I think is adorable
Yeah.
about this is it says Club Y. Diane had been propositioned 5 times in the last hour. Not one fit the profile, though several were exceptional dancers.
Yes,
I must be
there was
doing something I didn't know when I was in college because I never had that kind of luck before.
that's hilarious.
I just thought he's like, well, they're not what I'm looking for, but they're good dancers.
Now, that would
so
be
clinical.
that would have made a hilarious Twin Peaks episode to see him undercover at a gay bar.
That is so clinical. Seriously.
So they end up like tracking down some evidence. The suspect was placed in custody, but that's not the serial killer, as it turns out.
Mm-mm.
The evidence points to a salesman named Bush. Dale captures the salesman, who ends up confessing.
Yes.
And at this point, Dale's kind of fed up with the whole violent crimes, so he asks to be reassigned to the counterintelligence task force. And he
Right,
stays there for the next 6 years.
And they do not acknowledge if there are any tapes from this time period. The only thing that they have released or allow
Right.
are audio letters he sent to his father.
Yeah.
And which some of these crack me up. Sorry to hear about Shamrock's accident. The lab people here at the Bureau all agree that most people can function quite normally with only 3 toes. So I don't know what happened here, but
Yeah.
she lost some toes.
Yep. So this takes us to 1987, the year I graduated high school.
Nice.
Yeah. Dale's 33 by this point.
Mm-hmm.
He leaves counterintelligence to work on a joint drug interdiction program with the DEA.
Okay.
And there's a large shipment of cocaine being moved to a border town. The DEA is acting as a buyer in Tijuana, Mexico. Now, Dale's DEA counterpart, a certain Denise Bryson.
Dennis Bryson. Where do I know somebody?
Where do I know him? I know a Denise Bryson.
I know a Denise Bryson, yeah. So what I think is interesting about
and he kind of looks like Fox Mulder.
Yeah, huh. It's familiar.
Weird.
What I think is interesting is that he, this is good foreshadowing for when they have to track cocaine going across the northern border of the United States.
It was kind of nice to get some little bit of backstory about how Cooper and Dennis Bryson know each other.
Yes, I love that, and I love this
because I knew, like he says, in this show, he says like I knew you when you were Dennis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's a little thrown by all of a sudden she's Denise.
Yes, exactly. I love that he's the one thing that never seems to change regardless of country as a traveler finds himself is the lack of a view and accommodations that advertise one. The only vista I presently gauge out it is a large brown dog dragging a dead snake across a dusty road. I would not be surprised from the look of the dining room if I find that snake as a featured course of the midday meal. The next entry is Diane, never underestimate the truly unique eating experience reptile affords the adventurous palate. So he's a little skeptical at first, but then he's like, hey, snake isn't bad.
Yep. At least he's open to try things. So they get a call from the suppliers. Dennis decides to go with the seller, which turns out to be a big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Ends up disappearing. Dale gets concerned, goes to Dennis's hotel room, retrieves Israeli hand grenades and a submachine gun from Dennis's suitcase. So somehow he got that smuggled that into Mexico.
Few things in this world are as persuasive as a hand grenade down the shorts.
Yeah. So Cooper ends up tracking Dennis to a nearby ranch and then ends up rescuing him after lobbing some of those grenades. And he and Dennis end up like getting the hell out of Mexico.
Yes, because again, what is going on in Mexico?
Right. So their next big case is there's cocaine moving through a dentist's office in Oakland.
Hmm.
Cooper, turns out we learn, has a fear of dentists.
Yes, he does. He had not been to the dentist in 7 years.
Yeah.
He says, I'm sure this is just my imagination, but I am certain that every one of my teeth is suffering from severe decay.
Yeah. We make some comment that apparently that like some 7-year-old boy or whatever has a better dental future than I do or whatever.
Yeah, the bad news is the 8-year-old I was seated next
Yeah,
to in the waiting room has a better dental future than I do. He is the proud father of 6 cavities.
yeah.
So, and he says,
then he says like he makes the buy with the dentist and arrest him, but then he says, well, but at least like he did nice work or something to that effect. I forget what it was.
each time he found a new cavity, the dental assistant would shake her finger at me. Diane, if you have a moment, would you look through the Bureau's handbook and find out if there are any specific regulations against shooting dental hygienists? Diane, this is one dentist who has drilled his last tooth. Unfortunately, it was mine, but I think he did fine work.
Yep.
So he was able to arrest the dentist.
After he got some good dental work. So I thought that was funny. So about a month later after that, he finally leaves the DEA FBI Joint Task Force.
Right.
And presumably goes back to violent crimes again.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning of '88, he receives a tape from Windom Earle, who threatens him and says he'll see him soon.
I don't like the sound of that.
Yeah, no. And here, at this point, about a couple weeks later, Dale's assigned to a murder in Southwest Washington.
Now, this is where this book gets weird.
This sounds familiar. So he heads for a place called Deer Meadow. Yes, that Deer Meadow from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Mm-hmm.
He meets up with Sheriff Cable. Yes, Sheriff Cable from, again, Fire Walk with Me. So that whole business. Go ahead.
Who seems a little bit more agreeable.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah, he doesn't quite get the resistance that Chet Desmond got.
Right, exactly. So basically what's going on here is that this book says that Dale Cooper investigated the murder of Theresa Banks instead of Chet Desmond and Sam, which I think is bizarre because Fire Walk with Me. Well, first of all, this book we talked about in our last episode. I said pay attention to the date because this book was written before Fire Walk with Me came out.
Right.
So, and the first episode of Twin Peaks, when he is in the morgue looking at Laura Palmer's body, he says to Diane, he said, Diane, take this to Albert and his team. Don't go to Sam.
Right.
Albert seems to have more on the ball with this. So we know that Cooper knows that Sam has done this kind of stuff before.
Right.
And apparently this is our insight to the fact that even though Chet Desmond went missing, Sam came back.
Yeah.
So, that was incorporated into the movie. I'm just wondering why this wasn't.
Well, from what I understand, Kyle MacLachlan they originally wrote the script for Fire Walk with Me, intending to have Kyle MacLachlan as Cooper in those Chet Desmond scenes. Mm-hmm. But apparently Kyle MacLachlan wanted a reduced role. He didn't want to do as much in Fire Walk with Me.
Okay.
So this apparently is the reason why they created the character of Chet Desmond as a substitute Cooper, kind of like the War Doctor being a substitute Christopher Eccleston in the Doctor Who 50th anniversary special, The Day of the Doctor, for all you Doctor Who geeks out there.
The John Hurt Doctor.
Yes, the John Hurt Doctor. Yes, because they originally wrote it intending for the original, in this case Cooper, to perform this role, and so this is why we find out here. The body's Theresa Banks, just like it was in Fire Walk with Me, and Cooper goes to see the body in the morgue, just like Chet Desmond did, only with Sam. And we don't get any indication that Sam's with Cooper here.
No, Cooper's by himself, and we get pretty much the same exact story.
Yeah.
Except there's no Carl Rod, there's no Chalfant, there's none of that kind of stuff. But the whole, the same thing about the
she worked at a rest stop, which we know that she worked at.
Right, but we don't know that she was a prostitute. We get the T. Under her fingernail.
Well, we kind of knew she was a prostitute because of Leland was going to hook up with her.
Well, we don't know that in this book, is what I'm saying.
No, okay, I got you.
They don't talk about that in the book. We don't find Flesh World in her apartment.
That's true. We don't have that. You're right.
Right, we don't have that connection. And to bring it back to the real world again for a second, I think we have figured out why this book is out of print.
Because they have decided that it's kind of at least
because it is non-canonical.
Well, at least this part is. Yes, I think essentially the way I treat canon is that everything is canon until something more official comes along to contradict it.
Well, and I think a movie directed by David Lynch is more official than this
exactly.
book.
So in this case, Fire Walk with Me, the events in Fire Walk with Me, trump the events in this book.
Agreed.
So essentially, this is like an alternate timeline. Hey, maybe this is alternate timeline where Cooper did this instead of Chet Desmond.
See, and I thought about that. I thought about that if
that's how we can explain it at least and make it work.
Right. I was thinking about that with the whole wibbly wobbly timey-wimey thing that happened in the last episode of the new series.
Right.
That might have done something, but wouldn't that have only changed the ripples from when Laura went missing?
Yes, it would have. But
so what?
Unless there's just more. Maybe there was an alternate timeline where Cooper went farther back.
Possibly, maybe he did say, if we go further, everything will change.
Right.
So maybe that I don't. This is
the part where your brain explodes.
My brain explode.
Yep.
So this is the part where we start pontificating on information that was written 25 years after this book, and this book would have had no way of even beginning to predict what they would have said in this situation.
But we can kind of use our knowledge to kind of try to make it work a little bit.
Right. We can sort of try and fan fiction it
exactly. It is kind of fan fiction-y, but but it's kind of like retroactively explaining what happened.
Right. And it's just I'd forgotten about this aspect of the book when I read this again for a podcast.
Right.
I was like, oh yeah, that's right. There was no Chet Desmond. There was no Sam. There was none of that stuff with the local law enforcement.
Yeah.
And there was no Carl Rod. And so, thank God we got Carl Rod.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was definitely an upgrade.
That was a major, major upgrade.
Yeah.
So
now we do.
But I think.
Go ahead.
I do think that this explains why the diary is still in print, but this book is not.
Right. No, probably. What they need to do is do a revised edition of this book, revised and updated version, to fit in with, kind of fit it in that Chet Desmond did that. Maybe they could use that as a way to explain what happened to Chet.
Exactly, because we still don't know.
So there you go. There's update that, and we could finally find out what happened to Chet.
Come on, Mark Frost. You want to do this for us.
Or Scott, get your brother on this. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't care which member of the Scott family or the Frost family does this. I would like for it to happen.
Bring in another Frost, Fred Frost. Dave,
how many Frosts you got? I'll take them all.
Dave Frost. Who knows? Now we do get a little bit more information on Theresa Banks, which I kind of liked.
I liked this too.
So we find out that she was born in Tacoma, Washington in 1970 to Ellen and Tony Banks. So we know her parents. And at 12, we find out her parents were killed in a car accident, and she became a ward of the state.
Poor kid.
And then about 3 years later, she runs away from a state facility, and presumably there's the gap between there and she ends up becoming a prostitute.
Unfortunately, she probably becomes a prostitute around the same time she runs away.
Probably.
So she's probably had a very hard, tragic life.
In order to survive, she probably did.
Right. That's exactly what I'm thinking. But yeah, we do learn a little bit more about her backstory. She becomes a little less mysterious, but...
And in a sad moment, she ends up getting buried in an unmarked grave.
I know. I hate that she's in Potter's Field like that.
But it makes sense.
It does make sense. It
Yeah.
does.
Given who she was.
She's just such a tragic person.
Yeah. Well, Twin Peaks is nothing but tragedy in a lot of ways. But Cooper's there at least. He ends up returning to San Francisco because, hey, there's no leads to follow.
Yeah, there's nothing, and there's not going to be, because this is.
Yeah.
We find out later this is like a completely supernatural thing that he won't even begin to come close to until he gets to Twin Peaks.
Right. And
the only reason Bob was even there was because Leland was there.
Right.
So it makes you wonder how many other prostitutes there were in Leland's business trips across wherever he went that we just haven't noticed yet, because we found an R and a T and a B, right?
Right. Now,
Robert's got more letters.
Now, granted, well, yeah, exactly. Well, so maybe it was just either that was just the third in a potential series of victims that never happened, or they're just victims we never found out about.
That's what I'm wondering. That if he ever did finally finish spelling his name, we just don't know who they are.
Right. It's a good question. Cooper, a month later, has dreams of dancing with a little man and a beautiful young woman. Well,
ooh, who could those people be?
Who could those be? But yeah, a little timey-wimey action going on here.
When you see me again, it will not be me.
Right. Yep. Doesn't she look almost exactly like Laura Palmer?
She is Laura Palmer.
Yep.
I feel like I know her, but sometimes my arms bend back.
Yep.
So we've got more tapes coming in from...
Right. Windom Earle, like in June of 88, Windom attempts to escape but gets caught.
What I think is interesting about this letter from Windom Earle is he says, met any nice girls lately?
Right.
Which makes me wonder if they were thinking of saying that Windom Earle had something to do with Theresa Banks.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they didn't go through that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just, we don't know.
Or maybe he's just pouring salt in the wound of the fact that he knows that Caroline was the love of his life.
That's what I kind of got thinking, that like maybe it's kind of a veiled threat of like whoever Cooper hooks up with in the future, Windom Earle's going to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right, exactly.
Windom Earle says in a tape that it's time for the game to commence. Windom will move first at the worst possible time, but doesn't quite move just yet.
Well, and we know that Windom does move at the worst possible time when Cooper has been put on leave from the FBI for breaking the law to go into Canada to get Audrey. So after that happens, that's when he makes his move, when Cooper legally can't do anything because he's on leave from the Bureau. He's had to turn in his badge.
Yeah.
So we know he does in fact do that.
Yeah. Now, at this point, after getting this tape from Windom Earle, somehow Dale gets it in his head that, hey, I'm going to ask Diane out to dinner.
When I read this, I thought, is this the dinner? Is this the night?
But no, it couldn't be.
No, because there are some things that happen before he does wind up leaving for Washington. But yeah, she talks about the food that they ate in a very sensual manner.
Yeah, they ate at a Chinese restaurant, so he took her to there. And this is where he realizes that he doesn't know her last name. You would think she would have a nameplate on her desk. Or
that he would have to, I don't know, sign something with her name on it.
Yeah, or there'd be like a copied memo to her that would have her name on it. You would think
something, but apparently not.
No, apparently that Dale doesn't really sweat the small details when it comes to women. Apparently, he's told that he needs some vacation time again.
Which I think is funny that he just really doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
He's just content.
Yeah, he says he's like some little man in a small office or whatever.
Some little man in front of a computer has decided to take a vacation.
Right.
But the thing is, when you have been spending most of your life since you were 12 years old,
right,
trying to achieve what he's currently doing, you probably do think that the vacation is not worth it.
Yeah. It's just like, I want to work or whatever.
Right.
I want to be an agent. Um, so he ends up going to Medicine Hat, Alberta in Canada. He's
They have
hoping,
really good pie there, apparently.
and he's hoping to find his brother while he's in Canada, only to find out, his brother is now in South America.
Yeah, so he says, they haven't talked in about 20 years,
Yep.
and he wishes they weren't strangers, but they have very different paths, and he's aware of that.
Yeah, they keep missing each other, and that's kind of the last we learn about Dale's brother Emmett.
Right, we never hear about him again.
No, we don't know what happened to him. So a couple months later, Dale heads to Philadelphia after learning his father is ill.
Mm-hmm.
So presumably this is the point where, in Philadelphia, where Philip Jeffries shows up during this time while he's there, right?
Well, what year is it?
Well, this right here is 1988.
That would make sense. Yeah, that would make sense. That would be around the same time.
Yep.
So apparently for Cooper, you can never go home again because
this is September of 88.
Yeah, the hardware store is gone.
Mm-hmm.
His house is now a parking lot.
Yeah, they put it down for a parking lot for a fried chicken restaurant.
The Schlermans are gone. The school is still there. And apparently the janitor that caught him recording the sex education class won $50,000 in Atlantic City and has retired, which I think is awesome.
Mr. Jackpots.
So, Mr. Jackpots. So the movie theater was on fire. The diner's closed. And the only thing he says that remains the same is the cemetery.
Yep. You can't go home again.
But apparently you can shop there.
Yes. So, good news, though. Dale's father recovers. He had a faulty valve in his heart. And he and Shamrock decide they're going to sell the printing shop and leave Philadelphia.
Right. And the printing shop, which we found out a while back, had a bit of a reprieve after he sold all of those lunar maps to National Geographic.
Right.
So he had a bit of a windfall there, and then he started making calendars. Maybe
that got him to get his business back up and running again.
Right. And he started, how when you
get him out of bankruptcy.
Yeah, how like when you get a Christmas card from your insurance agent, it has a little calendar in it or something like that.
Yes.
That's I think he mentioned something about his father printing calendars after that. So I think he was printing calendars for other local businesses and things like that. Obviously something people need every year.
Right.
So, and here is where Cooper tells Diane that his father was in fact the one that discovered Cooper's crater.
Right.
Which again is adorable.
Yep.
So
you really love that.
I love that. I love it when you take an existing
factual
historical fact
yeah,
and then make a story around it. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's not that great, but I think it's an interesting way of telling a story. For example, there was a British miniseries a couple of years ago called Titanic.
Yes.
And what's her name was in it? What was the companion from Doctor who started out as the robot that couldn't make custard?
Oh, well, she wasn't a robot. She was. You mean Jenna Coleman?
Jenna Coleman, yes.
Yeah,
Jenna Coleman.
She played. First she played.
She wasn't a robot, but she was like
we find out that in the course of the story that she was ended up becoming a Dalek. Yes,
the Dalek.
Because the Clara Oswald, his eventual companion.
Clara, thank you. I could not think of her name.
So Clara Oswald. So eventually, she gets fragmented and scattered throughout time, and one of those cells, Oswald, ends up on this ship, and is essentially converted to a Dalek that we find out through the course of the story. And this is before he actually meets her as Clara later on.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So so that was Jenna Coleman.
Jenna Coleman is in it, and
who I've met by the way.
Oh, is she lovely?
She is very lovely and
nice.
Yeah, just as pretty as you would think in person. So.
Oh, I'm sure she is.
Yeah.
So in this miniseries, one of the things that the miniseries, and Chris and I like to jokingly say this, as paraphrasing the Royal Tenenbaums.
Yes.
What this show presupposes is that Peter the painter
Yep.
was on the Titanic.
Okay.
Which is, Peter the painter being the famous anarchist who would leave his mark through graffiti, and no one knew who he was. That was just his name through the press and law enforcement.
Right.
That he went on the Titanic because around the same time, all activity that had been attributed to him, the MO that had been attributed to him, stopped. So that conjecture was that he was on the Titanic and went down with it. So that's why everything stopped. And I think that's an interesting storytelling device. Whereas the James Cameron Titanic, I think, takes that a little too far.
Well, the Cameron version is so romanticized.
Well, the Cameron version is so, it does take an existing historical event and riffs on it, which I think is a fine idea, but I think it Zeligs itself a little bit too much. And I apologize for using a reference that validates the work of Woody Allen. But if you've ever seen the movie Zelig, basically he's in every possible historic thing. I guess you could say Forrest Gumping.
Yes.
Where
well, you weren't validating it; you were just referring to it.
I was referring to it. Well, the thing was that when Forrest Gump came out, we said he was Zeligging.
Yes,
so now we should say he's Forrest Gumping.
You made a verb out of it.
Yes, exactly. So the story sort of Forrest Gump's the character of Rose a little bit too much, but I like that concept, and I like that concept in this too. That his name's Cooper, the creator's Cooper, and they just slide it in there.
It
just
clicks.
Subtly.
It clicks.
I think that's adorable.
That is adorable.
So.
All right, so a couple months later, Dale realizes he's bored. I need a case, a good case. Mm-hmm. And guess what? He gets one.
February 24th at 6 a.m.
Yep.
There's been a body found in Washington State.
Yep.
A young woman wrapped in plastic.
She's dead, wrapped in plastic.
Get Harry on the horn.
Yep.
So yes, that is our last after one final letter from Windom Earle.
Who wants one last game.
One last game, but of course Cooper leaves for Washington.
Yeah, he says I'll make my first move very soon. Well, you said that back like a year ago, and you still haven't moved yet.
Well, again, how long did it take to Count of Monte Cristo? 7 years?
Yeah.
So yes, our last entry is Cooper going to Twin Peaks.
Yeah, that's February 24th. Now, 4 days before, though, I thought this was kind of interesting. He's unable to sleep, and he's questioning why he's here at this moment. And he asks, what is he destined to intersect with? So they try to reveal at least that Dale was a little prescient that something was going to happen.
Right. So, and then 4 days later he goes to Twin Peaks. But I love him saying, Diane, as Groucho Marx once said, Harpo, you talk too much. So I think that's his way of saying I'm possibly overthinking this.
Yes. Yeah.
But obviously not, because something was about to happen.
Yeah.
And for those of you kids out there who don't know the Marx Brothers,
shame on you.
Shame on you, first of all, especially now that we have this thing called the internet and YouTube and you can look them up all the time. Right. Harpo never spoke.
Right.
Harpo actually had a honk honk.
That was his character, was that he was a mute that used a horn to communicate.
Yes, he used a horn to communicate. So he was the teller of the Marx Brothers.
Right.
So that's why that joke is funny.
Yeah, it is. Now, there was one kind of continuity glitch here.
One?
Well, there's a few, but the big one, I think, is when Caroline stated to have died in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
But in the show, Cooper said she died 4 years ago, which would put the murder about 1985.
Yeah, that is a little weird.
That's like 6 years difference there. So kind of a little.
Mm-hmm. And that's
again,
not something...
I think that this timeline was shifted to accommodate the writer or what the writer wanted to write about.
Right, and I think in the sense of this, in the realm of just this book,
right,
that is a bit more of an egregious continuity issue, because that's something that was existing at the time, as opposed to the changes they had to make for Fire Walk with Me to be Chet Desmond investigating the Theresa Banks crime rather than Cooper. And I will say I prefer the Chet Desmond storyline because, as I said before, we get Carl Rod.
Right.
And it just makes the story that much more mysterious.
Right, because you have an FBI agent that just suddenly disappears, which is why Cooper's kind of brought in to kind of pick up where Chet leaves off.
Right. And you have the connection to Flesh World and Leland Palmer and to
Right.
Laura Palmer. And we didn't have that at the time. We only knew that the FBI was specifically Cooper was there
Right.
because he was aware of the previous case. They never said in the show that he was on the previous case. He was just aware of it.
Right.
And him being on, and this is something we of course work in later, that him being on the Blue Rose Task Force would make him aware of it regardless of whether or not he was on the case personally.
Yeah, we don't get anything like associating with the Blue Rose though at this point.
No, the Blue Rose is...
So that must have been something that they invented for Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me after this book was written.
That was completely generated for Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah.
We've never seen that before or since. And interestingly enough, Blue Rose was only that one thing. We haven't necessarily seen a Blue Rose.
No, but we've had, a reference to it.
Right, we've had reference, and they are called the Blue Rose Task Force because of that one case, the I Am the Blue Rose,
right,
and the tulpa. But we've never seen Laura with a blue rose. We've never seen an actual blue rose come up.
We did, because remember there was that whole thing that Miriam in the hospital was sent a bouquet of flowers of blue roses.
Oh yeah, that's true.
There was
that's true. But never with Laura though.
No.
So this is an intricate world of strange and beautiful, terrifying things.
Wonderful and strange.
Wonderful and strange.
Yeah. So do you have a rating for all this?
Oh, for this book, yes. Yeah. We should rate this book. I am going to give this book 7 out of 10 fireworks.
Okay.
Simply losing points, I think, for... I would have liked to have seen more of how Dale Cooper handles cases.
Right.
And I think that the redactions, while logical, I would have liked to have read more.
Right.
And of course, losing a point for being only half valid at this point.
Yeah.
And losing a point just because I would like some good things for Cooper. Because we know that after, he has some nice times in Twin Peaks, but he has some rough, his entire life has been kind of rough, and that saddens me.
Yep.
Doesn't make it a bad book.
No.
This is not my quality rating.
Right.
This is my enjoyment rating. So.
Okay. Well, I give this one, I'm a little more generous. I give it 8 out of 10 cassette tapes.
Nice.
Thank you. I treated this book as like, okay, it was a product of its time because obviously it came up before Fire Walk with Me, before season 3. So there's going to be some inconsistencies. I was expected that. I like Scott Frost's writing of Cooper. I think he really captured Kyle MacLachlan's voice as Cooper.
I think Scott Frost did a fantastic job capturing Cooper.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, just his phrasing of things, just the way he kind of like you could almost hear Kyle MacLachlan reading this dialogue. And so,
yes,
I appreciate it. And we learned a lot of stuff about Cooper, his life, and just granted, yes, I would have liked to have gotten a lot of that stuff, redacted stuff.
Yes.
I think that would have been more interesting if we had kind of had an expansion of the FBI years.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I would sacrifice some of the earlier stuff. But I find it really interesting, and just the this kind of like wacky, his doomed relationships throughout his life. And
Right.
now that we know about the white knight syndrome, I
Yes.
think it kind of puts everything in context for me. So I kind of like that.
It definitely puts things into perspective and puts things into context and does explain a lot about Cooper.
Yeah.
I just didn't want that for him.
Right.
And like I said, this is my. I mean, if we're judging
That's
this
fair.
on
It's fair.
quality of writing, this is definitely a 9 out of 10. But when it comes to my enjoyment,
Right.
that's where my rating comes from. That's
That's
my rating of enjoyment, not my judgment of quality.
That's fair. That's fair. So we did get some feedback on our Facebook. We didn't get have time for this last time, so I want to get this in.
Oh, fantastic! Yes.
Yeah. So Rachel O'Rourke Williams DM'd us on the Facebook page, Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast. She writes in, says, "Thank you for the in-depth discussion of the final dossier. I'm a bit behind on the podcast, and I just listened to those 2 episodes." That's cool.
You're not that far behind.
That's cool. You're good. Take it at your leisure.
Savor it.
Exactly. We don't do this weekly. Well, we did kind of the past 2 weeks. We did it weekly, but generally we don't. So that's okay. So here's something I've been thinking about. If Laura is only missing, then her cousin is still alive, and so is Harold. Come to think of it.
Please. I would love that.
So Maddie lived in Missoula. Isn't there another connection to Missoula? ? What do you guys think? Well, yes.
Well, there's an actual physical connection to Missoula because that is where David Lynch grew up.
Yeah, that was his birthplace.
Yes.
So yeah, and then of course we have that mention in episode 14, the 7th episode of the 2nd season, Lonely Souls, where Leland tells Maddie, "You're going back to Missoula, Montana!" Yep, as he rammed her head into a glass painting frame.
Oh my God, that is such a disturbing moment.
Now here's the really Easter egg moment. In that frame, that painting frame, if you look in the lower corner, you can see the words Missoula, Montana, written in
nice.
So
mm-hmm.
So he's like, okay, this is where and that kind of explains why he said those words.
Literally and figuratively, you're going back in there.
Yeah. So, but yeah. If Laura being taken out of time, yeah, presumably, I mean, we don't know if maybe Bob went after Maddie, but there would be no reason if Laura was taken out of time like that.
Because there would be no reason for Maddie to come stay for that long.
Exactly. She would
and there would be no
remained
reason
in Montana.
Right, and there'd be no reason to mess around with Maddie and make people think that she's Laura.
Yep.
And so that's interesting. So Rachel, this is an interesting path we have gone down here.
Right.
So if Laura if Laura is alive but just disappears, then I'm presuming a lot of similar things would have happened, like James kind of needing to get away and find his head, and and I think that. But no, okay. Now I'm sort of talking as I'm thinking, and that's never a good thing.
Right.
So if Laura goes missing,
maybe you have to talk this out.
If Laura goes missing,
yep. Domino effect here.
Would the same actions be taken by the same people? For example, would Maddie still come? Now I'm thinking. Now that I think about it, Maddie might not still come, because if your daughter goes missing, maybe what you don't want is another girl in the house to remind you that your daughter's missing. So maybe that would have been a little more inappropriate. Right. So maybe she wouldn't have come and stayed for as long.
Right.
Well,
there wouldn't have been a funeral, for one thing.
There would not have been a funeral. That's true. But she does stay with them for a while to sort of help take care of things.
So you're right. Yeah. So maybe she did come to help out for a little bit.
Right. I'm wondering if she would have come to help out a little bit, or if that would have just felt weird to, be like she was, replacing. I don't know. I'm not sure. It depends on who you are.
It's possible. How you perceive I would say it's possible, at least, that she.
Yeah. But would Donna have been as eager to solve the mystery and find Laura? So, because you would think that if she went missing, the cops would still have gone through her room.
Right. Right.
and found the safety deposit box with the other diary, and then they would have found out about Harold. So would they have still gone to talk to Harold? But maybe Harold would be a little less freaked out because Laura was just missing, not dead.
Right. And I think that as far as Donna, I think that she wouldn't have been. I think the fact that Laura died, it obviously upset her because she cried when she realized that
Right.
Donna was dead in that homeroom scene.
Mm-hmm.
So if she thought that dead, maybe just like she's out there somewhere, we don't know that she's dead because there hasn't been a body found. So there's maybe
Right.
that little glimmer of hope that she's still alive.
Right, but would
So,
she still have gone to Harold to try and find out what Harold knew about her, and if she had told Harold where she was going
yeah,
or something? Or would they have suspected Harold? And then would Harold have maybe
yeah. Well, that's
been put in a holding cell and hanged himself in jail? I mean, would something bad have still happened to
well,
Harold?
the investigation would have shifted obviously from a murder to a missing persons case.
Right. And again, when you have a missing persons case like that, again, we have
Yeah,
everybody's suspect.
right.
So I'm just wondering how people's actions would have been different. I
And
mean, I still think that Donna would have thought that being Laura's best friend, she's the only one that can solve this crime, especially maybe even more so because now that Laura's just missing,
hmm
was Laura kidnapped or did she run off on her own? And therefore, Donna might think I'm the only one that would know because I knew her better than she thought I did.
right. My,
So
so
I honestly don't know. That's a
I'm wondering if the FBI would have been called in because if maybe Ronette never got crawled down off the mountain out of that train car and
See, that's another thing. That's a good point because the
that
reason,
was the reason they gave is that once Ronette crawled across that bridge,
right, since Ronette was technically in Canada,
yeah, that became a federal crime,
it became a federal thing.
right?
So if
Jurisdiction
if
at
that
least,
if that night was just Leo and Jacques and Ronette up at the cabin
right?
with Leland with no reason to go there,
Yeah,
would Ronette have been, I don't want to say okay,
right.
but would Ronette have been, she wouldn't have been taken by Leland to the train car.
Yeah. And if it was just a missing persons case, they wouldn't have called the FBI in for a missing person.
Not at
Not,
that point, I don't think.
yeah, not, I mean, not unless there was some kind of evidence that there was,
They may have, well, okay, here's the thing.
yeah,
If they had found out once they opened the safe deposit box
oh,
and found Flesh World
right.
and realized that
And the cocaine.
and cocaine and realized that Leo Johnson was transporting cocaine across
Hmm.
state lines and engaging in teenage prostitution across state lines, then they might have called in the FBI with that. But I think it would have been later on that they would have done that.
Boy, this really goes down a rabbit hole, doesn't it?
This goes down a great rabbit hole. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I could
Thank
write
you.
it. You could write an
This is a
entire,
good one.
yeah, you could write an entire book on this, depending on how.
Seriously. Yeah, because what are
Hmm.
the actions and
Maybe I need to write this
subsequent?
book.
I think you do.
Uh,
Yeah, what are the actions that people take and the subsequent reactions based on Laura missing rather than Laura being dead?
right. It sets up
So,
a whole different chain of events.
and the FBI may have. I'm sure the FBI definitely would have come in once they figured out about One-Eyed Jacks because that is across the border
Yep.
and that is gambling, prostitution.
Right.
So that would be an across the border federal.
If the cocaine led all the way to what the drugs being muled across the border,
Yes.
then
Yeah. So
then
that is
yes, the
very
FBI would
possible.
have been called in. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. All right, just maybe things would have played out, but they just would have played out differently.
I would really, really like to think that Howard would have stayed alive.
Yeah.
I really love Howard.
Yep. So hope you got
Oh, not Howard. Harold.
yeah,
Harold.
Harold. Yes.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
What's wrong with my brain tonight?
It's my dad's name. Come on. Uh,
He
so
should stay alive too.
yes, he should. Yes, he should. Especially since tomorrow's his birthday.
That's right.
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
He'll be
Colin.
83.
Tomorrow is my cousin Kelly's birthday as well.
Oh, happy birthday.
She'll be 34,
Okay.
35. I forget. 34, I think.
Okay. All right. So then now you know our birthday information. So I hope we weren't getting too personal there.
Yes, I don't. We don't want to get too personal.
Don't want to get too personal. So thanks, Rachel. I hope you got your money's worth out of that answer for that from your question. So
Seriously, yeah, we can.
yeah, we
Just,
could just like take this as far as it can go. We could do this another 2 hours. Just
I'll probably be marinating on this for the next
yes,
couple of weeks, so this will probably come back up again.
that's true.
Yeah, definitely.
That's true because yeah, you're gonna have some time to kill on that flight.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true. I have an 8-hour flight coming up next week.
yep.
I'm going to Valencia, Spain.
Ah,
So,
yes. Yes, a little. You got to brush up on your Espanol.
brush up on my Espanol, which is not that great, but I can get around. I can go to the store and I can buy bus tickets.
You can
So
get
that's
by.
yes, I can get by.
¿Dónde está Casa de Pepe?
Donde está la zapateria? Where's the store?
I just thought of that old Steve Martin album that made me think of that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, maybe a little while before we do another Ghostwood, maybe a few weeks, presumably.
Possibly. Yes.
So what do you want to talk about next time?
I don't know. Let's marinate on that and surprise everybody.
Okay, because I was thinking this got me because going through this got me thinking about the Diane Twin Peaks tapes of Agent Cooper.
Oh yeah.
We could do that, which is also by Scott Frost, unless you want to do something a little different to kind of break up the Cooper emphasis.
No, we could do that. We could do that because there is on that cassette there is a lot of
new material.
There's
sound
bites for the show.
Yeah. So what's on those tapes for those who aren't aware? They did like some of the tape recordings that Cooper did while he was on the show, but there's also some specially recorded new material that Kyle MacLachlan did. So we get a little bit more bonus stuff. So we could talk about that.
Let's do that. Let's finish out the Cooper stuff. I forgot about those. Yeah.
Okay. So next time, what is it here? Next time for episode 30. We hit the big 3-0.
Good for us.
Yeah. So we'll do that here in a few weeks after Zan gets back from Spain.
Yep.
As she comes back all tanned and rested.
Well, I've been looking at the weather report, and it's going to be kind of overcast and rainy, so I doubt it. It'll be nice weather. It'll be like in the 60s, but
that's not bad. It's better than some of the weather we've had here lately. So
right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So all right. So come on back. In the meantime, if you want to get a hold of us like Rachel did, so thank you again for writing in, Rachel, and a great question. And if you want to reach us like Rachel did, you can reach us on the Facebook page, Ghostwood the Twin Peaks Podcast, or you can reach us on the Twitter machine at GhostwoodCast. Please do there and follow us. That would be great. Or you can email us, do the old school email at ghostwoodpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if you got any questions, just something maybe your theories on the alternate timeline ramifications, we'd love to hear from you.
Please let us know.
Or if you got any ideas of stuff that you'd like to have us cover here on Ghostwood, we're up for that as well. Stuff we haven't already covered. That would be great. Xan, where can they reach you on the interwebs? Well, after you get back from your vacation, or at least.
Well, hopefully I'll have some internet access while I'm there, but we'll see.
Yeah. You're on vacation. You're not supposed to.
I try to stay away from the computer when I'm on vacation.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Unplug
a little bit.
Yes, I am on the Facebook as Xan Sprouse.
Yes.
I am one of the moderators of the Ghostwood page, so if you have anything specific for me, I'm there for that.
Yep.
I'm on the Twitters and on the Instagrams as Udinax19, where I just basically post goofy little ramblings about my life or photos of things I think are hilarious. So.
And they're awesome. Or you send me Valentines from Leo Johnson.
Yes, Leo Johnson Valentines. Yes, for times for a bit of a time calibration here. Today is the 15th of February, the day after Valentine's Day, and I found some funny little Valentines on on the interwebs, and one of them was a picture of Leo that was basically his rambling about, you smoke one brand of cigarettes from now on, because if I come home and find two brands of cigarettes.
Yep.
So it was made to look like a Valentine, which I think is horribly psychotic.
And then of course they had the picture of him when he's got the sunglasses on, the party hat, and the kind of kazoo in his mouth, and
pretty much. Yeah. Oh my God, Bobby, he moved.
Yep.
And then there was another one that I saw that I thought was quite funny and a little bit naughty. It said it was Pete Martell, and it said, "This Valentine's Day, let me put my fish in your percolator."
Ooh, hey now.
Oh my goodness, we're getting a little forward there, aren't we?
Yep. A little risque there from
a little bit risque.
Pete Martell. Who knew he had it in him? I think he just seemed like such a sweet old man.
He did seem like such a sweet old man. That's true.
Yep.
So Charles,
it's always the quiet ones. Of course, you can reach me on the interwebs at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine, at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram, Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus. And then Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee and hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the things Twin Peaks-ish and Ghostwood and all kinds of comic book sci-fi goodness on my blog. Lots of stuff coming out this week. So, a bunch of trailers that came out recently, and some TV news, movie news. So check that out.
You're just nerding it up over there, aren't you?
Pretty much. What are you saying? That I have no life? No.
No, I'm just saying you're nerding it up.
I'm geeking.
That's your life.
I prefer geeking it up, because nerd is I've always treated nerd as a slur.
Really?
It's
interesting.
The N-word, a different N-word.
See, I always thought of nerd as being a little more bookish and geek as being a little more fanish.
Yeah.
So, or as they say in The Simpsons, I'm not a nerd, Bart. Nerds are smart. Poor Milhouse. Wah, wah.
I think it's kind of funny that you did something rather nerdy by referencing The Simpsons at that point.
I can't not do something nerdy or geeky. That's just what I do.
But that's why we love you so much.
Aww. I love you.
No, I love you too. All right. So now that we've done this mutual love fest, everybody come on back for episode 30. We'll talk Diane, the Twin Peaks tapes of Agent Cooper. And we'll do a little bit more insight into the weird and wonderful brain of Dale Bartholomew Cooper.
Bartholomew Cooper and the weird brain of the Frost family and the Lynch family and everybody in between.
And we'll get to listen to some Kyle MacLachlan goodness as well.
That is always awesome. And while you're waiting for episode 30, head on over to the Southgate Media Group Patreon, see what you see.
Yep.
Get an idea of what else is going on in the podcast world of Southgate Media. Maybe, every month you want to give us $1 or $2. Yep. That'd be great.
That would. And then maybe you could check out some podcasts like, Next Stop Everywhere, or the Phantom Zone podcast, or the upcoming Titan Talk, the Titans podcast.
Those would be good ones to pick.
I've heard those are great podcasts.
They've got a really good host.
Well, let's see. One's Jesse Jackson. He's really good. And another one's Karen Lindsay. She's good. So
Jesse and Karen are very good. Yeah.
I don't know about the other guy. The other guy kind of sucks, but yeah.
Oh, what are you talking about?
But anyway. So.
But So, and also this time around, the tapes of Dale Cooper, I believe, are on Audible.
Yes, they are. They are on Audible. They might be on YouTube too.
Okay, but yes, they are a little more available than the.
You get probably a better quality
if you go through Audible. Yes, and if you already belong to Audible, and you're like, oh man, what am I going to get this month? Well, that's what you can get.
Or if you're like me, you can dust off your old cassette player and the actual cassette that you still own, and hope that it doesn't jam when you play it.
Hope it doesn't get eaten. Yeah, yes. That's where I'm at. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to have to crack open the old alcohol bottle and cotton swab and do a little head cleaning before I do that.
A little maintenance might not be a bad thing.
A little bit of maintenance, yes, because I did try to listen to a cassette tape a couple of weeks ago, and it definitely needs a head cleaning. It sounded like this.
Yeah, well, in this case, it's maybe a 25-year-old tape, so yeah, might need a little.
Maybe I'll be buying it on Audible.
Yeah, I might be too.
We'll see what happens.
Maybe. Yeah. So fingers crossed. All right. So come on back, and we'll be right here on Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast. Bye, everybody.